Minister, I know you run a constituency clinic, a constituency office, and if it's anything like my advice clinics or the advice clinics of those in Sinn Féin or the rural group who've promoted this motion, it ought to be busy with people who are presenting household bills and presenting the choices that they're having to make on a daily, a weekly basis as to whether to heat their home or feed their families. These are not fabricated concerns on this side of the House. These are very real concerns from real people in communities all over the country. There's a lot in this motion and there's a lot to be commended. I know Deputy McGrath has wanted to have a debate purely on the pig farming industry, which hasn't been allocated, but it was included in this motion, and I think it shines a light on an industry which is struggling, and that I'm sure Deputy McGrath would have rathered a distinct section of Dáil business to be dedicated to it, but it's included in this motion, and probably rightfully so. But the cost of living crisis is widespread. It's cutting through every single community in every single county in our country. We in the Labour Party, like Sinn Féin, like the Social Democrats have, and now like the Rural Independents, have all brought motions over the last number of weeks to bring solutions to you, Minister, to try and tackle this. We support the call for a mini budget. We've had that on record for a couple of weeks. This is going to require a whole of government approach to tackle this soaring cost of living, which, you know, the cost of living is one way of putting it, but the other way of putting it is making the poor poorer. That's the reality of the cost of living crisis, that those that can ill afford to get by when things are relatively benign, when things take a turn like they have now, due to a lot of factors which, in fairness, are outside the control of our state. But you know, they are factors that are impacting people all over the country. It is the poor that suffer the most. But look, we have put forward proposals which we feel we'd ask you to re-examine. We need to look at an immediate rent freeze and a roadmap to reduce the Irish mortgage interest rates to the EU average. It is a scandal that they remain so high. We need to provide emergency energy cost relief package for households, which should include a temporary time-limited reduction on VAT rate on energy and fuel up until the next budget, and to seek an EU derogation to allow for a long-term retention of the historic 13.5% rate on electricity and gas after such a temporary VAT cut expires. I mean, with everything that we have done to bend over backwards for the EU in the last decade plus, we can go and we should go and apply for a derogation on this. There's no reason why we should not. We should introduce additional targeted supports for those in energy poverty by widening access to the fuel allowance, and commit to the introduction of a refundable carbon tax credit for low-income households to support the long-term phasing out of fossil fuels. I just want to take a moment to pause on that point and on the point of the carbon tax, because I am deeply troubled and concerned as to how the carbon tax is being discussed overall in the discourse. There are many reasons why the cost of living is rising. There are many taxes that are involved that are contributed to that, and many other reasons apart from taxation. I mean, in this motion itself, it details excise duty on petrol and diesel, for example. We've spoken about VAT. But there's been an effort by some, and we saw it in the debate last night from Sinn Féin as well, to toxicify carbon tax to the point where it becomes so deeply unpopular that it would be included in election manifestos going into the next election and will ultimately be either cut or wiped out altogether. Carbon tax is difficult for many. There's no doubt about it. It's difficult for people who are who have low incomes. It's difficult for those with no incomes. But there are ways that we can target supports for those families without having to roll back on carbon tax. Carbon tax is not the only method for tackling climate action, but it is an important one. And anyone who's serious about climate knows that it is one of the important measures. So this effort, and it hasn't just been going on the last couple of weeks. It hasn't just been last night's motion. It hasn't just been a big element of this motion. I've seen it when I've been on the doors for the last few months. There is targeted messaging going on in social media campaigns to try and turn the carbon tax into the new water charges, trying to turn it into a tax that is so deeply unpopular, that is so politically toxic, that it has to be defeated and rolled back on. And we need to retrofit homes. The energy consumption in housing in our country accounts for almost just under a third of all energy emissions. It has to be targeted and it has to be funded. It's difficult. It's going to be long. The package that was announced last week. There's a degree of ambition in it, but we need to see it work. We need to see it go to homes that need it the most and need to see it quickly. We need an awful lot attached to it. We need to see apprentices, we need to see experts in these retrofitting areas, in the trades, be available for this work. There's an awful lot to it. But I'm deeply, deeply troubled because climate can't wait. It can't. We're seeing it. We had 3 storms back to back in the last week where there's articles about how the jet streams in the Atlantic are changing due to climate change. These are the reasons these weather events are happening. The science is indisputable, and where the rubber meets the road on it is in areas such as this. So that's what's disappointing, because there are so many different ways that we can help people that are in difficulty in terms of the cost of living crisis. We can help people through direct targeting of supports, of payments, to get through this and to be able to phase out fossil fuels in their own life, in their own lives. But unfortunately, there seems to be a sledgehammer approach to this, which unfortunately will crack the debate, the mature debate we need to have about climate, and it does a disservice, and it takes away from the actual real measures that are some of which are in this motion, some of which are in other motions, many of which are in the motions we brought 2 weeks ago. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and thank you very much.